It started with a buzzing sound, faint but persistent, like an angry mosquito that refused to die. I wiped the sweat off my brow and looked up from my tomato plant. There it was, black, sleek, and hovering right over my field, its little camera lens tilting downward like a nosy neighbor peeking over a fence. I grabbed my shotgun on instinct, but then I heard another buzz. And another. Within seconds, 4 more drones appeared, circling like vultures. At first, I thought some punk kids were having fun. Maybe someone lost control of their fancy gadget. But then I saw the stickers on them. HOA property. My stomach dropped. There was only one person insane enough to do this. Karen. Karen wasn't just an ordinary HOA president. No, she was a tyrant in yoga pants, a walking neighborhood surveillance system with too much free time and too little sense. She had a permanent scowl, a voice that could strip paint, and an unwavering belief that the entire world needed to follow her rules. Unfortunately for her, I didn't live under her jurisdiction. My farm sat just outside the HOA's grasp. But that never stopped Karen from trying. A week ago, she had left a note in my mailbox, written in her signature passive-aggressive cursive. Dear resident, the state of your property is concerning. HOA regulations must be upheld for community beautification. Please ensure your farm meets the proper aesthetic standards. I crumpled the note and tossed it. She had no legal authority here, and I figured she'd get bored and move on. I had underestimated her level of crazy. Now, here she was, watching me from above like some budget version Big Brother. I put my hands on my hips and glared at the drones. You've gotta be kidding me. One of them tilted slightly, as if acknowledging my disbelief. I reached for a rock and lobbed it. The drone dodged effortlessly. The others hovered like menacing hummingbirds, their cameras zooming in. My blood boiled. This was beyond annoying. It was an invasion of privacy. Determined to get answers, I stomped off toward the HOA office, a shiny little building that looked like it was built solely to house unnecessary rules and overpaid committee members. I didn't even make it inside before Karen stepped out onto the front porch, her arms crossed, an infuriatingly smug look on her face. "Ah, Jake," she said, voice dripping with fake concern. "I was hoping you'd stop by. Have you seen our new HOA security drones? They're quite impressive, aren't they?" "Security?" I scoffed. "Karen, those things are spying on my farm. I don't even live in your HOA." She waved a manicured hand dismissively. "Your property borders our community, and as HOA president, I have a duty to ensure everyone follows aesthetic guidelines. We wouldn't want property values to drop, now would we? Lady, I grow crop. Unless you've got a problem with tomatoes, I don't see how this concerns you." Karen sighed dramatically, as if I were the unreasonable one. "It's not just the crops, Jake. It's the vibe of your farm. The equipment, the fencing, oh dear, those old tires by the barn? Simply unacceptable." I stared at her, trying to decide if she was actually serious or just clinically insane. "So let me get this straight. You think some tires on my land are an eyesore, so you're sending drones to harass me?" "It's not harassment," she said, all innocence. "It's compliance monitoring." I clenched my jaw. "Turn them off," she smiled sweetly. "I'm afraid I can't do that. HOA policy." I took a deep breath, forcing myself not to yell. "Let me explain something to you, Karen. You don't own my land. You don't control what I do. And if those drones keep coming, they're gonna start dropping out of the sky real fast." Her eyes narrowed. "Are you threatening HOA property?" I grinned. "Nope. Just warning you." She gave a huff, spun on her heel, and marched back inside, slamming the door behind her. I stood there for a moment, fists clenched, trying to figure out my next move. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. By the time I got home, the drones were still there. If anything, they seemed closer, hovering just a few feet above my crops. I grabbed my phone, did a quick search, and smirked. It was time to fight back. The next morning, I paid a visit to my neighbor, Earl, a retired Air Force engineer with a workshop full of gadgets that technically shouldn't be legal. When I told him about the drones, he let out a deep chuckle. "She's using consumer-grade surveillance toys," he said. "Nothing fancy. You could take 'em down with a rock if you're lucky." "Tried that," I admitted. "Didn't work." Earl scratched his chin, then grinned. "Ever hear of a signal jammer?" An hour later, I was back on my farm, setting up a small black box Earl had lent me. According to him, it would scramble the drone's signals within a certain radius, causing them to lose control. I flicked it on and waited. The first drone wobbled. Then, with a sputter, it spiraled downward, crashing into the dirt with a pathetic little plop. I laughed. The second drone went down moments later, followed by the third and fourth. It was like watching mechanical flies get swatted out of the sky. By the time the fifth one hit the ground, I was wiping tears from my eyes. The next morning, Karen was back. This time, she didn't bother with pleasantries. She stormed onto my land, red-faced and furious, her phone clutched in her hand like a weapon. "You," she screeched. "You destroyed HOA property." I smirked. "You mean the illegal surveillance drones?" "Yeah, they had a little malfunction." Her jaw tightened. "Do you have any idea how much those cost?" "Nope. Don't care." She took a deep breath, visibly trying to contain her rage. "This isn't over. You will be hearing from the HOA's legal team." "Good luck with that," I said. "Because last I checked, spying on private property is illegal. But hey, maybe your lawyers will love explaining why you were filming my land without permission." Karen opened her mouth, then shut it again. For the first time, she looked unsure. I could almost see the wheels turning in her head, trying to figure out her next move. I smiled, knowing full well what was coming next. Karen wasn't the type to give up. No, this was just the beginning. And if she wanted a war, I was more than ready to fight. Earl handed me a beer as we sat on his porch, watching the sunset over the field. The first round of drones had been easy enough to take down, but we both knew Karen wouldn't stop there. She was too stubborn, too obsessed with control to let it go. Sure enough, as I took a sip, my phone buzzed. A notification from my outdoor cameras. More drones. Bigger ones. I let out a groan. She upgraded. Earl chuckled, shaking his head. Figured she would. Probably went crying to her HOA board about her damaged property. I bet she convinced them to double the budget. I stared at the screen. The new drones hovered higher than before, out of easy reach. Their movements were smoother, more deliberate. These weren't cheap consumer-grade models. Karen had gone all out. "She's gonna keep pushing," I muttered. "I need to shut this down before she gets it in her head to start flying those things inside my damn house." Earl took a long sip of his beer before grinning. "Then it's time to step up our game." The next morning, I set up a few more jammers around the property. Earl had given me a stronger model, one designed to cover a larger radius. I placed one near the barn, another by the chicken coop, and one in the middle of the field. If Karen wanted to keep playing, she was about to lose big. The first drone appeared just after noon. It hovered cautiously, as if testing the waters. Then, another joined it. Within minutes, 3 more arrived, circling like mechanical hawks. I turned on the jammers, crossed my arms, and waited. The results were immediate. One drone wobbled violently, then spun out of control, plummeting straight into my cornfield. The second one jerked to the left, its camera tilting wildly before it careened into a fence post. The third dropped so fast it looked like someone had swatted it with an invisible hand. By the time the fourth and fifth went down, I was grinning ear to ear. Then I heard the shouting. I turned to see Karen storming up my driveway, her face redder than a sunburnt tomato. She was waving her phone like it was some kind of legal weapon, her voice shrill with fury. "You absolute menace," she screeched. "You think you can just destroy HOA property without consequences?" I leaned against the fence, looking unimpressed. "Your property was trespassing." Again. She stomped her foot. "Those drones are legally authorized surveillance equipment. I raised an eyebrow. Authorized by who? You? Because last I checked, you don't have jurisdiction over my land. Karen took a deep breath, clearly trying to regain some composure. This is about community standards, Jake. Your farm is an eyesore. It brings down property values. I laughed. An eyesore? Lady, this is a farm. Farms have dirt. Farms have equipment. Farms don't follow your suburban princess handbook. She glared at me, her nostrils flaring. This isn't over. She turned on her heel and marched back to her car, slamming the door hard enough to make the whole vehicle shake. As she sped off, I knew this wasn't just about property values anymore. This was personal. Earl was waiting for me back at the house, shaking his head. She's not done, he said simply. Yeah, I agreed, cracking my knuckles. Neither am I. The next evening, I noticed something strange. The jammers were still on, but no new drones had appeared. It was too quiet. Too easy. Then, just as I was about to head inside, I saw it. A single drone, bigger than any of the others, was hovering at the edge of my property. It wasn't moving, just floating there, almost like it was waiting for something. I frowned and stepped closer. That's when I saw the logo on the side. It wasn't an HOA drone. This one was professional grade. My stomach sank. Karen had escalated. I ran inside and called Earl. He answered on the first ring. I see it, he said before I could even speak. What the hell is it? I asked. Earl sighed. That's a private security drone. High-end. She must have hired someone. I clenched my jaw. Can the jammer take it down? Earl hesitated. Maybe. But if she paid for top-tier surveillance, it might have countermeasures. These things are built to resist interference. I watched the drone, my mind racing. Karen had officially lost it. She wasn't just spying on my farm anymore. She was bringing in outside forces. Well, I said after a moment, guess it's time for Plan B. Earl laughed. You got a Plan B? I smirked. Yeah. And it's gonna be fun. The next day we got to work. Earl had an old friend who owed him a favor, someone who knew how to redirect signals instead of just jamming them. We set up a makeshift signal hijacker, something designed to take control of the drone instead of just knocking it out of the sky. By the time Karen's new toy showed up again that evening, we were ready. I flipped the switch. The drone wobbled, twitched, then suddenly turned. It hovered for a moment before taking off, straight toward Karen's house. Earl whooped. Hell yeah! Look at that sucker go! I watched through the binoculars as the drone, now fully under our control, began circling Karen's perfectly manicured backyard. It dipped low, knocking over one of her decorative lawn gnomes. Then it turned toward her patio, knocking a cup off her outdoor table. Karen came running outside, her face twisted in horror. She started waving her arms, trying to shoo it away like an angry goose. But we weren't done yet. With a quick adjustment, Earl sent the drone straight into her swimming pool. The splash was glorious. Karen stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Then, as if realizing what had just happened, she let out an ear-piercing scream. Earl and I were laughing so hard we could barely breathe. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Karen wasn't the type to let something like this go. If she was willing to spend this much money on drones, she'd come back with something even worse. Still, I wasn't worried, because I had a feeling that when she did, I'd be more than ready. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of sirens. I groaned, already knowing who was behind it before I even looked out the window. Sure enough, 2 police cruisers were parked in my driveway, and Karen stood beside them with her arms crossed, her face twisted into a victorious smirk. She looked like she had just won the lottery and was about to collect her prize. I stepped outside, wiping my hands on my jeans as one of the officers, a guy named Deputy Wilkins, approached me. He had dealt with Karen's nonsense before, so the tired look in his eyes wasn't surprising. "Mornin', Jake," he said, sighing. "Karen here says you've been destroying her property and engaging in cyber warfare against the HOA. I blinked. Cyber warfare? Karen cut in before Wilkins could respond. Yes. He used some kind of illegal device to hijack my security drone and crash it into my pool. That's destruction of private property, and I demand he be arrested immediately. Wilkins pinched the bridge of his nose. Karen, we've been over this. You were using drones to spy on private property. That's illegal. Karen gasped like she had just been slapped. It was for the good of the community. His farm is an eyesore, and I was collecting evidence of his violations. I snorted. Violations of what? Your personal sense of decor. Karen's eyes narrowed. This isn't over, Jake. I will take legal action. Wilkins looked at me, then at Karen, then sighed again. Karen, unless you've got actual proof of a crime, there's nothing we can do. Karen's smug expression faltered. But he. Nothing. We can do, Wilkins repeated, slower this time. Stop wasting police resources. Karen let out an indignant huff and stomped off, getting into her car and peeling out of my driveway so fast she nearly took out my mailbox. Wilkins shook his head. You know she ain't gonna let this go, right? Oh, I know, I said, watching the dust settle. She's just getting started. That night, I spotted something new. Another drone, but this one was different. It was bigger than the others, and it wasn't alone. Two more flanked it, moving in perfect synchronization. These weren't Karen's usual toys. She had upgraded. Again. I groaned. Oh, come on. Earl was already at my place, sipping his beer on my porch. When he saw the drones, he let out a low whistle. Damn. She went all in this time. I pulled out my phone and zoomed in. Looks military grade. Earl chuckled. I got something for that. I raised an eyebrow. You always have something for everything. He grinned. That's what makes life fun. We went into his workshop, and he pulled out a case, flipping it open to reveal a device that looked like a futuristic rifle. This, he said proudly, is a high-powered electromagnetic pulse emitter. One squeeze of the trigger, and anything electronic within range shuts down. I grinned. I like it. Earl handed it over. Just be careful. It's got a wide radius, so don't go aiming it at your tractor unless you want to reset the damn thing. I walked back outside, took aim at the lead drone, and fired. The effect was immediate. The drone sputtered, twitched, then dropped like a rock. The two others followed, spiraling down in a chaotic mess of sparks and broken parts. One of them landed in the creek with a splash. The other crashed right into Karen's precious white picket fence. Earl let out a loud laugh. Oh, she's gonna be livid. I didn't have to wait long to find out. The next morning, Karen was back. This time, she wasn't alone. She had brought an entire crew from the HOA, including a couple of guys in suits who looked way too official for something as stupid as a drone fight. She marched up to me, pointing an accusing finger. You have crossed the line this time, Jake. I folded my arms. Oh? And how's that? She gestured dramatically to the broken drone on her fence. These were top-of-the-line surveillance drones, and you illegally interfered with them. I have legal representation now, and I am filing a lawsuit. One of the suited men stepped forward, adjusting his tie. Mr. Jacobson, my name is Richard Calloway. I represent the HOA's legal interest. We have reason to believe you have been engaging in unlawful activity, including destruction of property and interference with community security measures. I stared at him. Security measures? Those things were spying on me. Calloway remained expressionless. The HOA reserves the right to monitor properties to ensure compliance. I smirked. You mean properties within the HOA's jurisdiction? Which, in case you forgot, I'm not in. Calloway hesitated. Karen's face twisted in frustration. It doesn't matter. I will not let you make a mockery of this community. I took a step forward, lowering my voice just enough to make sure everyone heard me. Karen, do you know what's illegal? She folded her arms. What? I pointed at the remains of her drone. Unauthorized surveillance. privacy violations, stalking, trespassing, all of which you've been doing for weeks. Karen's mouth opened, then shut. Calloway shifted uncomfortably. I grinned. And you know what's funny? I've got all the footage. Your drones recorded everything, including where they crashed, and how they were on my land without permission. Earl, who had been quietly filming the whole thing, held up his phone. I got it all right here. Karen's face drained of color. You! I cut her off. So here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna take your fancy lawyer and your little HOA cult, and you're gonna walk away. Because if you don't, I'll be the one filing a lawsuit. And trust me, Karen, I will win. Silence. Karen's hands trembled as she clenched her fists. The HOA board members whispered among themselves. Calloway cleared his throat. I believe it would be in everyone's best interest to avoid further legal disputes. Karen turned on him, eyes blazing. You work for me. You're supposed to be on my side. Calloway adjusted his tie. I represent the HOA. And frankly, Mrs. Atkinson, this is not a case we can afford to lose. Karen looked like she was about to explode. Then, without another word, she spun on her heel and stormed off, her entourage awkwardly following behind. Earl let out a low whistle. Well, that was fun. I chuckled. Yeah. But I doubt she's done for good. Turns out, I was wrong. A month later, the HOA voted Karen out as president after discovering she had funneled thousands of dollars into her drone surveillance project. She had no choice but to sell her house and leave the neighborhood entirely. And the best part? I bought her old house at auction. Earl helped me turn it into a farm supply store. We hung up a sign that read Karen's exile feed and supply. Every time I walk past it, I can't help but smile. Because no matter how much power she thought she had, at the end of the day, she lost. And I got the last laugh.